In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, I bear witness there is no God but God, and God is the only one who has a right to be worshipped. I also bear witness that Prophet Moses, Prophet Jesus, and Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon them, are the messengers of God, and I seek refuge in Allah from the rejected Satan. So I've got a very important video for you all today. This topic affects us all. Doesn't matter what religion background, what spiritual background you are in, if you're atheist, a believer, this topic affects us all. And this is the topic of usury and interest and lawful trade, lawful economics, divine economics. It's all going to be touching on all these bases. We're going to be touching on the basis of World War III, World War, of Imam Mahdi, the Mashiach, as well as the second coming of Jesus, peace and blessings be upon him, who's also a Messiah and Mashiach, obviously. So we're going to tie this all in. We're going to have some some verses of the Quran that's going to help us understand what's going on and how give us solutions and how to remedy this and what's going on in the world, using some events that have been going on in the world to help us illustrate and understand things, giving examples. But first, before I get into all that, I just want to give a quick thanks to God and all those who helped. In my last video, we wanted to raise the Schumann resonance, the vibration of the earth, and we did achieve that. It was very consistent. It went for several days, and it was very beneficial. So again, in this video, we want to try to raise the vibration of our own selves, which will help vibrate the earth higher, as well will ripple out into all of creation and help raise all of creation up. For the sake of God, we don't do this for our own benefit, or I shouldn't say for our own sakes, but we do this for the cause of God. We do this to please God, and we don't seek thanks from anyone but reward from the Almighty. So let's get into it. We're going to go to chapter 2, verse 279. If you do not return the gains from usury and interest, then beware of war from Allah and His messengers. But if you turn away, then you shall have your principal back without interest. Thus you shall neither deal unjustly nor be dealt with unjustly. So Allah is saying, if you've been admonished by using interest and usury, we should anyone who's been awakened by God to see what's kind of going on in this world. Even as me, as a small child, 2 or 3 years old, I knew something was completely wrong with this world. It just didn't feel right, and what didn't feel right was the usury and interest that permeates all of the countries, all of the states. Usury and interest is so wickedly evil that it is eternal slavery. Our children's, our grandchildren's, if we do not change the state of this world, our children's, and so on and so forth, into the future will be in eternal enslavement due to compound interest that all of our countries are using. So, like I live here in Canada, and the last year, roughly $100 billion went to go to the banks to pay off interest that the governments of Canada racked up in debt. It's designed that way so our tax dollar, a large proportion of tax dollars that are paid here go to pay interest to bankers for absolutely nothing in return, and it perpetuates eternal enslavement. If you look at the United States, which is about 10 times the population of here in Canada, you're looking at about $1 trillion in interest payments to the banksters. So those trillions and trillions of dollars that the world economy pays into interest, which is perpetual eternal enslavement, could be going to feed the needy people, could be going to building new homes for people, could be used in so many positive aspects. But in turn, these trillions of dollars that are being unlawfully stolen from the people through interest and other forms of usury, like the dollar system, which is a usury system. There's nothing backing up the dollar. The dollar is just printed out, so they could print out trillions of dollars, and then our savings, our economy is obviously weakened because of supply and demand. There's more supply of dollars in the economy, which makes the value of the dollar decrease. So we can see how evil these usury systems are, these internal enslavement tools like interest, completely enslave humanity. So we want to move away from that, and that's where Imam Mahdi, the Mashiach, as well as Jesus, son of Mary, the Messiah, will abolish these things, will abolish usury and interest. So Allah is saying here that He declares war on those who revert back to usury and interest. Now, if any political leader or any president or prime minister or king or queen of any nation or state, etc., is not aware of the evils of usury and interest, that alone should disqualify them to being a leader. That you'd have to have some capacity to be a proper leader. Now, not having that knowledge would be detrimental for any leader. But I believe most of the leaders, especially the Muslim, more religious ones like the Christian, so-called Christian, Muslim, and Jewish states around the world, those leaders should full well know that interest and usury are definitely unlawful to God. But they perpetuate that because of their own greed, for their own lusts and desires of this world, and not looking forward to the hereafter. So every country, every so-called Muslim country, every so-called Christian country, every so-called Jewish state like Israel are not for God, because how can you have... There's actually no Christian state, there's no Muslim state, there's no Jewish state in this entire world, because it is all eyeballs deep into interest and usury. You can't be a state for God if God is at war with you because you're dealing with interest and usury. This is the... when you probe into the energies of the earth, energies into these countries, you can feel an evil, you can feel a darkness, you can feel an evil that lurks everywhere. And this is because of the interest and usury that is enslaving the people. I find this topic very difficult to discuss because of the immense amount of evil that I can feel when I discuss this. So I'm trying to be very light, I'm trying to be very loving when I speak about this, because it can be very hard on the heart. So we want to remember that God is one, God is all powerful, God is all knowing, God is in perfect control of everything, God does injustice to no one ever, and we need to have our trust in God and always remember God in these difficult times to help us break through. And we have glad tidings of the coming of Imam Mahdi, the Mashiach, as well as the second coming of Jesus. Peace and blessings be upon them, that will help rid the world of this usury, interest, debt slave, eternal debt slavery system. So it is very evil, very, very evil. So and then in turn, these banks that collect all the interest money turn around and use that money against us by buying off politicians. Allah says if you follow the majority, they will lead you astray from God's ways. So democracy is not a lawful way to conduct a country. That these politicians can be bought off with this interest money, chemtrails and the polluting of our water, paying for proxy armies, etc., are all being done by the money that is being collected on interest from these bankers. So they can buy off all their politicians. They can buy off all sorts of people through their usury, the debt slavery system. So, and as we can see this, and I want to get to the part of World War III, which it gets really heavy, where we were actually born. World War One, Two was to set up this debt slavery system. They had to get rid of the Muslim Khalifa system, the Ottoman Empire, which was the remnants of the Islamic Empire. So they dismantled that after World War II, and they also they wanted to control Jerusalem because they know in the future that Jesus will rule out of Jerusalem. So the enemy wanted to take hold of Jerusalem prior to the coming of Jesus. They also wanted to control the Muslims. They already had the Christians taken care of through Rome, through the Vatican, through the Catholic religion. So they had all their angles covered. They had Christianity covered. They had the Muslims covered after World War II, and they had the Jews covered after World War II. So they had all these territories where they knew in the future God was going to send luminaries down to help break the chains of this eternal enslavement known as usury and interest. So we are in the war right now. It is lukewarm. It's not a hot war. It's not a global war, but we were born into war. This is, people say, oh, I don't want World War III to happen. I mean, World War is already here. We're already at war. And as I said in the beginning of this video, all the nations all the people of the nations are at war. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, etc., etc., atheist or believer. This interest affects us all. It is a crime on humanity in general. All the politicians, as far as I'm concerned, the banksters, a great majority of government departments, like police and the judicial systems, are all supporting this usury system. So they're all in cahoots in this war against humanity. Some of them knowing, some of them unknowing, but nevertheless, they're still supporting that system. So those, we're going to go to chapter 2, verse 275. As for those who revert to the practice of usury and interest, it is these who are the fellows of the fire, therein shall they live for long. So those who have been admonished about usury and interest, which I believe every politician, that's, you know, every leader of every country should know, like I said before, that usury and interest is an unlawful practice. It is an eternal enslavement tool. And if they're not aware of that, they shouldn't be a leader to begin with. So I mean, every single politician out there should be aware that, you know, they're most likely definitely going to the hellfire. So don't worry if you see these politicians are not punished in this life. Don't worry. Allah is the most just. So that is what's going on. So they might say peace, they might promote peace, and we're going to take the example, I find the Palestinian situation is a great example, as the leader of the United States, and as well as Israel and a bunch of other people, made a so-called peace plan. This peace plan is automatically a declaration of war, because they want to impose their banking system, which is a debt-based eternal slavery tool, as well as their usury fiat currency, which is another way to eternally enslave group of people. So they so-called call it a peace plan, but a peace deal, but it was, like I said, a declaration of war. They will not allow Palestinian to be free. They want to impose their debt slave system on the entire of humanity, which they have done. That's why I said there is no state on this earth that is for God, because a state that is technically for God cannot be at war with God. So, like I said, God declares war on those who are dealing in usury and interest-based ways of economics. So, yeah, it has to be changed, and that is why when Imam Mahdi and Mashiach comes first before Jesus to lay the groundwork, one of his main two things that he will be doing will, I'm sure, be getting rid of the usury interest-based economic system, and moving towards a charitable economic system. And like I said, people will have an abundance of wealth. As Allah says here in chapter 30, verse 39, what you lay out as interest and usury with a view to increase the wealth of the people does not help increase it in the sight of Allah, but that which you present as zakat, which is a charity for the needy, with the view to seek the pleasure of Allah, it is they who will increase wealth many times over. So, as Allah is saying in this verse, that those who lay out interest in usury with a view to increase the wealth of the people will not increase the wealth of the people. As we can see, the majority of the world is in a state of poverty, and then if you want an increased wealth many times over, then you need to revert to a charity-based system that focuses on the needy people, and that, as Allah say, will increase many times over. As we know in the hadith of Imam Mahdi, the Mashiach, Prophet Muhammad said many times over, peace and blessings be upon him, that Imam Mahdi will fill the world with justice as it was previously filled with injustice, and that people will be so wealthy in the economy that no one will be in need of zakat, of charity, because all people's bases will be covered. So we can see from the hadiths of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, that a charity-based economy works if it is run properly and not corruptly. So that is what's going on in the world today. As you can see, any country that tries to divert away from the petrol US dollar, or want to converting their paperback dollar backed by a gold currency, or they straight up ban gold and silver, because that would completely destroy their usury system, and move away from their interest-based system. And the USA, Israel, Saudi, Europe, all of Europe, you're looking at probably China, you're probably looking at Russia as well. All these countries will go to war if you're going to move away from the interest-based economy. So as we can see in the Middle East, all the countries that try to move away from this interest-based, they say it's all about the oil, but I don't believe that. It's all about the interest-based economy. That's what they want to establish, to perpetually, eternally enslave humanity for all of existence. And that is their plan. That's how evil these people are. And if we don't do it, we don't stand up to these people, we don't enlighten others about what's going on, this will continue for a very long time, eternally, if nothing is done. So it's very important for us to understand this, and to not accept this, and prepare for the coming of Imam Mahdi, the Mashiach, as well as the second coming of Jesus, the Messiah. So we're going to go to chapter 4, verse 74, let those who would prefer the hereafter to the present life fight in the cause of Allah. And whoso fights in the cause of Allah and is killed or conquers, we shall soon grant him a great reward. So I know a lot in the spiritual community think fighting is bad, it's not good. But if you're fighting for the cause of God, for the justice of God, for the truth of God, this is very highly spiritual actions and deeds that one can do to really elevate one's vibration, even though it is through a fight. So we're at war, people. This is we're at war. World War III is already here. It's just lukewarm. They're just attacking any country that tries to divert from their corrupted, usury-based, eternal interest debt slave system. So very important for us to know that we can fight for God. We will be rewarded for fighting for God, and either one of two things will happen. Either we'll be greatly rewarded for being a martyr, or we will enjoy the bounties of our conquests. So this is what's going to happen. I was meditating on these verses as why so many wars are going to happen when Imam Mahdi, the Mashiach, and the Son of Mary comes. Why is there going to be so much aggression? Well, it's because of the removal of this debt-based interest, the eternal debt-based slavery system is a removal of that, and so that will cause a lot of agitations with these criminals and the that want to enslave humanity and use them as their own personal batteries. So we're not going to accept that. I'm definitely not going to accept that, and we're going to do everything we can within the laws of God to repel this and remove it completely from the earth. Now, in the Hadith, it says that Imam Mahdi Mashiach will fill the earth with justice, as it was filled previously with injustice. So that means the complete removal of this interest-based system. That's why Armageddon is going to happen. That's why there's going to be big fights, and the believers are going to win. That's what is prophesied. They know it, and their time is running out. So keep that in mind. And chapter 2, verses 208, O you who believe, enter into the fold of those showing complete submission to Allah, all of you, and do not follow the footsteps of Shaitan. Verily, he is your enemy, severing you from Allah. So are you going to be with the Shaitan, with the people of the debt slave system, with the usury system? Are you going to be in the armies of those who go out and impose this debt slavery system on the weak, on the downtrodden, as we see what's going on in the Middle East? Are you going to be with those Shaitans, or are you going to be with the High Command, with Allah, the Source, the unique Creator of all that exists? So we're going to go into the second phase of this video, which is a little bit more lighter, a little bit more you can say lighter, I guess is the best way to say it. But these are going to help us understand, give us solutions to these problems. Obviously, we know trade is lawful and interest and usury are unlawful. So we're going to help embody these higher truths and wisdoms and help increase our vibrations, which will help increase the vibration of the earth, and that will ripple out into all of creation, and we will see the effects of this on the Schumann resonance. So keep an eye on the Schumann resonance. After I upload this video, you should see an uptick, inshallah. So we're going to go to chapter 4, verse 32. Do not covet the favors which Allah has bestowed on some of you to excel others. Men shall have the share of their fruits of their labor, and women is their share of fruit of their labor. You had better seek from Allah His bounty. Verily, Allah has perfect knowledge of all things. So both women and men have a right to the share of their labor. This is pretty common sense. chapter 4, verse 29. O you who believe, do not consume your property amongst yourselves by unlawful means. Rather, it be a trade based on free mutual consent. So, the Palestinian example is a prime example of what's going on. That the people who are ruling in Israel, not every Jew, obviously. I'm just talking about the leadership. They are taking the Palestinian land unlawfully. They're using iniquity. They're using things in the past. They're using a document as the Bible as a means to take people's lands unjustly, using iniquity and stuff like that. This is very unlawful. Like I said, Jesus is the one who's going to rule from Jerusalem. It is not going to be these corrupted people that are imposters, that are basically holding that land hostage and enslaving the people, the Jews, the Muslims, the Christians, the atheists, the other sects and religions of people, all of humanity that they're trying to enslave, not just the Palestinians. So they're taking their property unjustly, and to exchange property has to be mutual, agreed upon, a mutual consensus between the buyer and the seller. So we're going to go to the next verse in chapter 2, verse 208. If any debtor be of straitened circumstances, there shall be respite for him till ease. So if anybody who can't repay back a debt because maybe they're having a tough month, a tough year, something happened in their business, or something happened that they're having difficulties paying their debtor. As we see in the North American societies, the bank will be quick to come in to take your card, take your house, take everything you own, basically, if you can't pay in their timely manner that they want. So it just shows another level of injustice that goes on in the world, and to always give people ease if they are dealing with difficult circumstances. Chapter 17, verse 35, give full measure when you measure out, and weigh with a right balance. That is best and most commendable in the long run. So to always be fair in your dealings, do not try to short people, etc. Chapter 26, verses 181, verses to 183. Give full measure, and be not of those who give short, and weigh with even and balanced scales, and do not defraud people of their things. Do not go about acting corruptly, creating disorder in the lands. Chapter 83, verse 1, woe be to those who make a default in any of their duties and give short measure. So if you're going to make an agreement with somebody, have a contract, make sure you fulfill the contract at the fullest. Fulfill your agreements. If you made an agreement to do X project for X amount of dollars, fulfill that project according to the contract, etc., or the agreement, to the fullest of the agreed upon project, and then the person would measure out the amount for the payment, etc. So be fair in your dealings, and this is the cause and effect universe. So if you cheat somebody, somebody will cheat you, etc., etc. If you give out in charity, God will repay you in manifold ways if you do it for the cause of God. So remember that God is one. God's essence is all around us. God is omnipotent, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-seeing, of all different times, all different places, in any given moment. So we need to put our trust in God. We need to live and care about these laws and commandments that Allah has blessed us with. If we didn't have these, then the world would be a much worse place. And inshallah, we're going to get rid of this usury debt slave system soon, inshallah, when Imam Mahdi, the Mashiach, will be known and will assume a leadership position. I believe the first and foremost thing would be to abolish the usury the fiat usury system and the eternal enslavement interest economic system that is in place right now. We're at war already, as Allah says in the Quran, that every country is under the war of God now because, and for many years prior. So World War III is already here. It's just lukewarm. It's like somewhat cold. When the fighting starts, obviously it's going to be more hot, but it's been a bit hot and cold with all the battles that have been going on in the Middle East, because they know in their hearts that this debt-based slavery is of the devils, of the shaitan, and we want to be with the high command. We want to be with God, the unique creator of all that exists, who has power over all things and does injustice to no one ever. It is through our own actions that causes our own harm, or from our blessings come from our own actions. So this is a cause and effect universe. So this is a bit of a heavy video. It took me a few days for me to feel energetically prepared enough to give this video, so it is a little bit heavy. So remember all the positive things of God, and that God is in control, and God, the victory is in God, and all glory and praise be to God, inshallah. And thank you for watching thus far, if you have, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be with you. Thank you.